Hello and welcome to the Kentucky Today podcast. I'm Lawrence Smith, the editor of Kentucky Today, alongside managing editor Mark Maynard, life issues reporter Tessa Redmond, and content editor Chip Hutchison. Guys, I want to start with what I think is arguably the most tragic, perhaps even barbaric story that we ran this week. The governor of Massachusetts, Maura Healey, signing a new law that essentially allows abortion up to the moment of birth. Tessa, fill us in on this law and what it means, what it does.
Yes, so the new law out of Massachusetts basically removes previous restrictions on abortions after 24 weeks in pregnancy. So 24 weeks in pregnancy is generally considered the point of viability. That line kind of moves depending on the child and any conditions they have, medical care that's available. But the point of viability is when a child can survive outside the womb with medical intervention. So around 24 weeks is where that typically lands. And so in terms of Massachusetts, instead of having women who have reasons related to their physical health, their mental health, if there's a fatal fetal anomaly, if there is some other life-threatening condition where, in the best judgment of a medical professional, that child is not going to survive outside of the womb, abortions were permitted after 24 weeks in pregnancy. And so now, under the current law that was just signed, abortions can happen past that point in pregnancy based upon the medical judgment of the physician who is taking care of the pregnant woman.
Tessa, that can mean, for example, a partial birth abortion where you partially deliver the child and then before it is totally comes out, essentially kill it. I guess that would allow for that as well, wouldn't it?
I'm not sure in terms of specifics of the Massachusetts law what procedures are allowed. Sometimes, for example, in Kentucky, we have a partial birth abortion where we know that cannot happen in Kentucky. It's my understanding that generally that's not the primary practice of abortion providers. What seems to be standard at this point, late in pregnancy, is basically euthanizing the child, injecting some sort of drug that kills the child in utero, and then inducing labor, and then having a woman give birth to the child that way. But I'm not sure. Possibly, it just depends on the way Massachusetts law is currently set up.
Well, it's barbaric either way. Mark, I know what really made your blood boil was a picture that you saw as the
Absolutely.
governor was signing the bill.
Absolutely. You have the governors, the typical picture of the governor signing people behind, but these people they were happy. They were celebrating. This is great. And I just couldn't believe it. I mean, this whole situation is just really kind of unbelievable that that can allow it to even happen, really, as we see this anyway, for sure. This has taken a life in a lot of cases, in most of those cases that they're talking about here. So yeah, that picture really set me off. The picture tells 1,000 words. Yeah, it did for sure. And they were kind of angry words, I'm afraid. So
Chip, has become even more clear, hasn't it, that the overturning of Roe in the Dobbs decision uh, really is just the beginning of another chapter of
Yeah,
the abortion fight, a state by state battle.
yeah. It sure is. And, you know, uh, building on what Mark has said, it's truly hard to believe that this is happening in America. I mean, we read horror stories, the one we have on Nigeria and the horrible treatment there of Christians, but it is horrible to think that this has happened in America and that abortion is being celebrated. My goodness, we grieve and we pray for our country.
And as well, Massachusetts is not the only state. They're one of, I believe, nine, in addition to
Yeah.
Washington, D.C., that don't limit abortion past 24 weeks gestation or don't have some sort of gestational limit. So this isn't necessarily a new thing. It should shock us. It should cause us to pray. It should cause us to grieve. But unfortunately, Massachusetts is just one of several states that's already taken that step, and one of at least four that may have choices related to abortion on the ballot here in the upcoming election. So a lot of decisions that are going to need to be made.
Another illustration of the red state, blue state divide. The blue states become even more and more pro-abortion. We'll keep an eye and see what other states do. You have to think that Massachusetts, unfortunately, may be just the first.
Yeah.
that does this. I know there's already been loosening of restrictions in Minnesota, for example. It wouldn't surprise me if there was a case in California as well. Well, there was some good news on another cultural front. The Trump administration says Medicaid will no longer pay for so-called transgender procedures on minors. Mark, this so-called healthcare mutilates young people's bodies, has lifelong effects. It's banned in 27 states, including Kentucky, and tax dollars really should not be going to it.
Absolutely not. And like you say, more than half of our states are already saying no, don't do this. And I really, it's just boggles my mind that we even got to this point in this whole controversy with the transgender thing, and especially for the kids. I guess whatever, after you're 18 years old, you do what you want, but to force that on kids, and a lot of times that's what it is. It's parents forcing it on their kids. I mean, it's just, again, it's like Chip was saying on the abortion thing. That is really happening in America. That is insane, and it's gotten to the point where nothing surprises us anymore.
Right.
When it comes to the cultural things.
And that's a bad place to be, tell you the truth. Nothing surprises us. Well, these parents very often have been given misinformation. How many times have we heard them say, well, do you want a dead son or a live daughter? Well, research increasingly is showing that that's not the case, that's not the solution. Mental health treatment is the solution, not mutilating their bodies. Chip, you mentioned this earlier, but Kentucky Today ran a really heartbreaking story about the Christian persecution in Nigeria. Obviously, that touched your heart, all of our hearts, Chip.
It did. I mean, Nigeria, largest nation in Africa, I think sixth largest in the world, and the treatment, it's not just of Christians, even Muslims who are just horrific situations where chopping people into pieces and then just atrocious things happening to them. And my goodness, here in America, how blessed we are to have the freedoms that we have, freedom of religion, and to not go through certain things like that. So certainly pray for the Christians there in Nigeria that they are being persecuted severely. To read the story, it will absolutely turn your stomach. And my goodness, if we don't believe we live in a fallen world, just look at that story.
And Tessa, it's women and children that seem to be suffering the most.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The story definitely highlighted several women in particular who have been impacted, and that just breaks my heart. Mark, the editorial that you ran on the abortion law that we just talked about, right? A society is measured based upon how they treat their most vulnerable, and the most vulnerable in Nigeria are really suffering. Nigeria, that is the number one country that's most dangerous for Christians to live in. So yeah, I just echo Chip. We need to be praying because women and children are definitely some of the primary victims in all this violence.
Fortunately, as noted in that story, some Christian attorneys, lawyers are stepping up to help. But yes, we need to pray for our brothers and sisters in Nigeria who are going through intense and brutal persecution. Well, let's go a little closer to home here. The school is back in session here in Kentucky, and we run stories about how Kentucky Baptist churches are really getting involved in their local schools. Josh Greene, the pastor of Fairdale First Baptist Church here in Louisville, wrote a piece about the importance of building relationships with your public school, and I asked him why he sees schools as a missional opportunity.
Well, there's open doors there. There are needs there, lots of needs. To me, that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit that I really want to help churches see. If there are churches out there that are like, we don't really know any lost people, we don't have any young people, we don't see any teenagers that are getting saved, or something like that. Man, there's a lot of opportunity in schools. And we have found that there are some open doors there And it is our desire to walk into the open doors that we think God is creating, which all fits right into the mission.
So talk about what this looks like for your church, I guess. What do you do?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, we genuinely want to see the schools do well. We don't want there to be a tension or a conflict in our community. Um, we want the students to have good days. We want the teachers to be happy and teach students. We want students to get educated and learn. We want the sports teams to be united and have team bonding and win some game, all of that kind of stuff. And so we're we're supportive however we can, whether that's bumping into somebody in the grocery store and saying, "How'd the game go last night?" or whether that's a family in the church whose kid is there and saying, "Hey, how you like your teachers?" Whatever. We want the schools to do well. And over time, over years, as we are like that, and therefore connected to schools, engaged with schools, we have sought ways to, hey, how can we be helpful? And I want to use that word because it just sounds simpler and easier, even than saying missional or tactful or mobilizing. I just mean be helpful. I've got a list of nearly, 100 things that we've done over the years to just try to help the schools. If they need the grass mowed, we've got somebody that would gladly do that. If they need somebody to come volunteer at field day, we've got somebody that would be glad to do that. And then, some of the bigger things that are mentioned there in that article is the high school football coach didn't have somebody to feed the team before a game. You're talking about 70 young men that need a good meal before they play at 7:30 on a Friday night. Well, our church is filled with ladies, especially retired ladies that love cooking and love seeing young men do well. And it just feels natural for us to say, "Oh, you need somebody to help here? We'd be glad to do that."
It sounds like there are many ways, both large and small, that individual Christians and entire churches can be involved. One of the points that you make is to be vocal, speak about Jesus. How do you pull that off in a public school setting?
Right. Yeah. And that takes some wisdom, but I think that Christians, especially Christians that have been walking with the Lord for some time and have grown in some maturity, Christians know that wherever they are, whether it's the Thanksgiving dinner table or whether it's their secular job, they know when to speak up and when not to speak up, and we're prayerful about those opportunities. And so it's kind of the same thing. There have been plenty of times where we've been in a school and been praying that we'd be able to get into a conversation, and it didn't really happen. And again, 24 years is also a long time of working and building up relationships and trust. I understand that. But there's also times where um, God just opened the door. I mean, God just opened the door for us to speak. Yeah, I remember one time we were feeding a football team, and while we were feeding the football team on a Friday, the coach got a call that his mother had died.
Mm.
That was a tough one. We had the church was filled with these kids and they were eating. It's a good, fun time, 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And coach gets this call. He steps out. He's broken, devastated. Um, well, a couple days later, he calls me and says, "I'd like it if you could do my mom's funeral." Maybe didn't know another minister. I don't know. Maybe didn't have a church. So he asked me to do it. So I'm honored by that. That alone shows that he trusts our church. He thinks somewhat highly of us. And the feeding the team is the only thing that has created that love and trust. Well, not only that, Mr. Smith, they end up asking, "Is there any way the funeral could be at your church?" So we said yes. Well, then he gets the administration to approve it that the whole football team, the principals, assistant principals, they all came. And so here's an opportunity that we got to have a funeral service with me preaching about salvation to a huge group. And so that's just one opportunity of that opened up, but there are all sorts of them. And in that article, I spoke to that. It's basically just helping a lot and then waiting for an opportunity to come up. And eventually, with more and more trust, it does come up.
That's Josh Greene, the pastor of Fairdale Baptist Church, and you can read his article on getting involved in local schools on KentuckyToday.com. Mark, you and Chip both wrote about recently schools that have stepped up to help their local public schools. Mark, let's start with you about a church in Falmouth, what they're doing.
Yeah, Trinity Southern in Falmouth. They're a church that's really into their community anyway. I mean, they are deep into their community, but in this occasion, this time, a sister church in Florence Baptist Church, has a ministry called Hope Ministries, and it's separate from them, but they work through them. They're both equal nonprofits, I guess. But Hope Ministries supplied 140 boxes of new clothes, shoes, things like that, for them to just give to their community. And they flooded that place at the church there, and they got people coming in, and they're talking to them, and they're saying, do you attend church anywhere? Are you a believer? They're asking all those kind of questions. So they got a lot out of it beyond just getting these kids new clothes. And you think about how important it is for a kid to come to get to go to school. If he's in not cool clothes, I'll say it that way, he may be the victim of some bullying or kids making fun of him. But he was able to, these kids are able to have good clothes. They also gave him haircuts. It was just a great thing, and it was a good thing of working together. We talk about being together all the time. This was just a perfect example of it.
Neat story. Chip, tell us about Elm Grove Baptist in Murray.
Yes, this church has done a clothing giveaway prior to the opening of school for several years, and the number of people served has not been as large in recent years. Pastor Clint Gentry was surprised when he showed up at church for the day that they were giving away the clothes. It was on Sunday afternoon. There are already 50 to 75 people lined up, and they had not opened. So he took advantage of that to get a loudspeaker and was able to talk to the crowd then and share the gospel with them. Every child that came through, they served 223 kids that day. Each one received 5 sets of clothing. Other churches met other needs, but no church met the clothing need. And so each child got 5 sets of clothes, and they also got a bag that contained a gospel tract. So they were very pleased that they could share the gospel with that many people, as well as to meet a very serious need there in the Murray community.
A couple of modern day examples of giving a cup of water in the name of Jesus. These churches getting involved in local schools and making a big impact. That's great. Let's go to college now. Mark, you did a fascinating story about how the Baptist campus ministry really changed the life of a missionary kid.
Yeah, a missionary kid named Nathan Pinkston, and he lived in Marta in Europe, far away from here. That's where he was born. His parents are missionaries there. They've been missionaries there for 29 years. And, you're a missionary kid. It's like a pastor's kid or whatever. There's expectation, right? That, oh yeah, well, he's a believer. He's got to be. His parents are believers. But this young man just wasn't sure. And he wasn't comfortable. He didn't want to have his parents' religion. That wasn't him. So he had to find his own way. And the University of Kentucky Baptist Campus Ministry provided a community for him. First off, his brother also attends UK, so he talked him into going to BCM, and it took a little bit of talking by some of the kids there, but eventually they helped counsel him. They helped lead him to the Lord. I mean, you know, it's not like this kid had never heard the gospel. He'd heard it his whole life, you know, but it's more than just hearing the gospel, as we know. You know, it's got to come from your heart. And he just didn't feel like it was in his heart. But after hearing from all these kids and different ones, and he said he went to his room and he said Romans 8 was his favorite chapter. He had actually memorized the entire chapter, if you can believe that, from a boarding school that he'd gone to. But he said it just came to life. You know, it was just like, you know, the lights came on, and he was saved. And he had his father baptize him in the Mediterranean Sea after he went back to visit them. And it's just a great story. And, you know, his parents are great people, Earl and Robin Pinkston, just outstanding people. They're from Kentucky, or, well, Earl's from Kentucky and Robin's from Tennessee. But this young man, I asked him, you know, UK, you're going to UK, what about sports? You know, you like sports? He said, I don't know nothing about it at all. I don't know anything about Big Blue and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, well, you'll learn. So.
Oh, yeah, you'll learn. But that just shows you it's not just head knowledge, it's heart change, and only the Holy Spirit can do that. And the Holy Spirit finally pricked his heart. So that was a neat story. BCM, of course, made possible by the cooperative program.
Right.
Kentucky Baptist giving generously through that program. And we're grateful for all the Kentucky Baptist churches who do give generously. But Chip, you did a story about the extra commitment made by one Kentucky Baptist church.
Yes, Porter Memorial Baptist Church in Lexington, one of our strong churches. Nick Sandifer's the pastor, has been there since 2016. Years prior to his arrival there, the church faced some hard financial decisions and had to decrease its giving to the cooperative program, to missions, and had a real heart that it wanted to pay back that money that had been diverted. And it's been doing that incrementally in recent years. But here a couple of weeks ago, gave a $167,000 check to our executive director, Todd Gray, to make, and they feel like now that debt is paid off, but that's money that's going to missions, and it just shows the heart of that church. And as I've had several members of that church say, that missions is in its DNA, and you know, it's obedient to give, and that is a great witness, I think, to all of us about giving and making sure that you honor the Lord in your tithes and your offerings.
That's incredible to me, because it would have been easy, you know, just say, hey, we're going to resume giving, but not think about what you did not give in the past. But this church obviously kept track of that and decided they needed to double down on what they were doing.
Yes, it's a great testimony, and we've got an article coming out here in the next few days about stewardship. And, you know, it's not a matter, we're not talking about money all the time. We're talking about obedience, being obedient to what God is telling you to do.
Well, again, we're generous for all. We're grateful for the generosity of all our Kentucky Baptist churches to make the kind of ministry possible that they're cooperating together makes possible. Well, Mark, churches are cooperating in a big way in Central Kentucky for a big event coming up this fall.
Yeah. The Hope for Central Kentucky is what it's called. And that will be like right before the week before the annual meeting leading up to it. But there's been a lot of groundwork being laid in teaching people, you know, how to share the gospel, the different ways, you know, 3 circles. There's a lot of different ways to do that. And Jason Hay and Greg Lakes, who was the AMS in Tates Creek, helped spearhead a three sessions in like 5 days where they were training people, and they trained 309 people in ways to share the gospel, and they came out of there fired up and ready to go. And you know, they'll be knocking on doors in a week in October, a weekend, maybe 2 weekends, and then they will be headed to Richmond, where the annual meeting is this year. And there's all kinds of crossover events leading up to the annual meeting, including an evangelistic outreach on the Sunday prior to the meetings, you know, the meeting starting in the pastors conference and all. So it's a great thing. And, you know, to train 309 people to be able to do that think of the impact that could possibly have. I mean, it's really, and the people were so excited. You know, they were so excited that they learned new ways to share the gospel. Most of them knew how to share the gospel, I would think, but it doesn't hurt to have a few new tricks up your sleeve, and I think they provided all that, and they mainly provided them with some energy, and they accepted that energy, and here we go, and it's a great thing. It's a great week, and I look forward to seeing the results that will come from that.
It is so awesome and gratifying to see churches coming together like that, working together to share the gospel in a large area like Central Kentucky. A lot of people live there, so it's going to be interesting to see what impact they can have. Well, Chip, I'm always impressed by the faithfulness of Kentucky Baptist pastors, even through personal crises. And Chip, you told us about the pastor of Macedonia Baptist Church who went through a big personal crisis, but yet is still praising the Lord.
Yes, Brian Grigg and pastor of Macedonia Baptist Church in Catawba in Lyon County was playing a church softball game, slid into home plate, and somehow his cleats dug into the ground. Long story short, he broke his ankle in 7 places. He wound up being life flighted. They took him to Paducah. They didn't want to touch it, and so he took him to Vanderbilt. He was life flighted to Vanderbilt and had surgery. He actually had 2 procedures, and he saw the goodness of God through all of that. The different people, the X-ray tech who said, "Can I pray for you?" And he didn't just say that, but he stopped in and prayed for Brian and for his wife Krista. Same thing happened with an RN in the hospital. The really neat thing also, so Brian, here he is. He's not going to be able to preach for a few weeks. Daryl Crawford from Living Hope Baptist Church in Hopkinsville, about 45 minutes away from Macedonia Baptist Church. Daryl called and said, "We will take care of your pulpit supply as long as you need, and you don't owe a cent to whoever fills the pulpit." And it was a great relief for Brian. Brian's household is very unique in that they still have 7 children at home, and their oldest has been married, and he's out of the house now. But it's a great relief for him. And Brian does point out that when he slid into home, he was safe.
But, we talk about the cooperative program, but it's more than finances. It's more than money.
Yes.
That demonstrates what cooperation is, that this other church coming in to fill a pulpit for the pastor who was temporarily disabled. Amazing. Gratifying. All right. Care or don't care. Time for this. The buzz in Washington, D.C. is the announcement that White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is stepping aside to spend more time with her children. She has a newborn and a toddler, and she's giving up this high-profile, very powerful job in Washington, D.C. to go home and care for these children. Care or don't care? Tessa, I'll start with you. You're a young mother yourself.
Yeah, as a working mom, I think it's notable that someone with her influence in her position, and I'm sure with the pay as well, would choose her children over a career. That really is a statement in today's day and age, where it's all about pursuing what we want as individual people, instead of, when the Lord blesses us with children, make sure we're prioritizing their care and their discipleship as the Lord calls us to. So I care simply because I just think it's interesting, especially just the day that we live in.
Mark, care or don't care about Caroline Leavitt leaving to go be mom?
I think I care about it, actually. And I think, she's going to stay on as an advisor, which I don't think she has to necessarily, be in the White House or be around there. But, you think of what she's taken the last 2 years, she's taken a lot of arrows for Trump, when you really think about it. And she's been very loyal to him, and to, all his policy and everything about that. And in fact, she's been almost aggressive with it, and I think you have to be, the reporters are coming at her, and, that she had no easy job. That's for sure. I'm not surprised, to go home for the family. That's great too. But I think that job is tough. It can take a toll on you. And, I don't know if you can do that job 4 years, honestly, in today's age. And the kind of pressure that you're under to explain everything and to, be the spokesperson, for the president of the United States. My goodness. I mean, it's not going to get a whole lot bigger than that.
Chip, care or don't care?
I care, definitely. I've been so impressed, and I'm taking the politics out of it, her ability to think and speak and be eloquent in what she says to questions from national news media and to keep her cool. I'm so impressed with her, but she's a 28-year-old mother. And I think, listen, her job is 24/7. She's always on call, always got that in her mind. And I think she is making her children a priority. I will tell you, I'm so anxious that years later, whenever she writes her memoirs or her book, I think it will be so entertaining.
I agree. And I agree. I care as well for the cultural statement that it makes, as Tessa mentioned, giving up a job with national importance for one with eternal importance, and that's raising her children. So we care. Good for Carolyn. And we'll see who's going to take over. There's lots of rumors about who's going to take that job, including maybe a person with a Kentucky connection.
Yes.
So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching and for listening. Please tell others about KentuckyToday.com. Give our podcast a positive review on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search for Kentucky Today Podcast. For more on the Kentucky Baptist Convention and the cooperative program that makes this program and so much more possible, go to kybaptist.org. Lord willing, we'll see you next time on the Kentucky Today Podcast.